Hello and welcome to this joint podcast. Today we'll be talking about Suicide Squad. I'm Callan, also known as Anima, and
I'm HoneyPandaBunny.
And as we know, the movie's not done particularly well critically. A lot of people have kind of slated the movie. I think it's currently at 27% on Rotten Tomatoes. So generally, I quite enjoyed the movie. I thought it was pretty good. There's obviously some flaws with it, which we'll get into. What was your initial opinion on it?
I liked it. I was a bit against it at the first. When I first watched it, I was like, oh no, this is just another really bad film created by DC. And I came out of it and I was like, oh, I didn't really enjoy that and I was kind of disappointed. But then I saw it for the second time and I have a different opinion on that now.
So. Okay. Well, I mean, I saw the trailers and I wasn't particularly going into it with a lot of hype like a lot of people were. Because obviously it's coming off Batman versus Superman, which obviously a lot of people didn't like. I'm also one of them. I mean, the movie was both good and bad, but generally bad. But this one I went into with a bit like not low standards, but not particularly high standards, and I came out enjoying it. I thought for about a 2-hour-ish movie, it was alright.
When I went into it, I was like, oh, okay, this is gonna be great because they did loads of trailers and the advertising was everywhere and everyone was dead hyped, and I was like, oh, interesting. And I saw all the stuff about Jared Leto doing weird things. I was like, oh my god, if he's doing all these weird things, he must play an amazing Joker in this film. Must be really revolutionary. So I went into it, I was like, oh, this is gonna be really interesting. I came out and I'm not to say that it wasn't interesting, I was just like, oh, that wasn't what I was expecting, and it wasn't as good as I was expecting, kind of thing.
Yeah, well, from what I understand, the director David Yader, he was very vocal about them all, sort of putting in method acting and kind of getting really deep into the characters. I don't know how well that's come off on screen. I think some characters have shown that more than others. I mean, obviously, you were talking about the stories with Jared Leto. I wasn't particularly sold on this Joker. I don't feel like he comes across as that great of a threat, but at the same time, I'm not sure how much of that's obviously been taken out of the screen time, because obviously we've all heard a lot of his screen time got cut away, and maybe that's recovered in a DVD Blu-ray. What about you?
I think that quite a few, as you said, characters came off well and some didn't quite come off as well. I think Deadshot was done amazingly. I think that was really gone into, still had the quirky funny side, but yeah, some characters were a bit of a flop for me, but not to say that they were bad at acting. I think it was more just the writing.
Well, I mean, I agree. I thought Deadshot was the best part of the movie. I thought Will Smith did really good with the material he was given. I do think at times he comes off as maybe a bit too Will Smithy rather than the actual character. But in terms of the movie, it does actually work. He's a very charismatic actor, and he does get that across in the character. I mean, he's dealing obviously with the backstory with his ex-wife and trying to look after his daughter, while also dealing with the fact that he kills people for money and he's bent out of shape with Batman and then being brought in with the squad.
Yeah, I think that had a very interesting dynamic, and the fact that not only that, but he had different rivalries and stuff, and I think that Flag really helped with him figure out about everything with home life kind of thing, because he got to see what it's like to be a in quote unquote good person. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Out of all of them, he is probably one with the complete character arc. Obviously they set up the stuff with his daughter in the flashback and dealing with that, and obviously that's eventually followed through in the ending. I thought Flag was alright. I wasn't particularly a massive fan of him. I thought he did okay with the material. I thought the relationship with June Moon, the Enchantress, was a little lacking. I don't think they showed enough chemistry or really enough scenes with them together, and because she's the main motivation of him, I just felt it didn't carry enough weight going into the movie, and especially towards the ending where you're supposed to buy the fact that she's possibly dead and he's emotionally affected by this, but I never felt that the movie had earned that spot.
We've gone over the characters a little bit, but we'll go over that a bit later on. Shall we talk about the plot then?
Yeah, sure. I mean, generally the first 30-40 minutes is sort of character introductions, and I mean they don't really become a squad until quite a bit into the movie.
We get to see Batman.
Yeah, we do briefly get to see Batman a couple of times, mostly in the flashbacks. I don't think he's in any of the current events apart from after the credits, in which he has a little scene with Amanda. Commander, which is a good scene, but doesn't really add anything new, I feel, to movies going forward. But I thought the first 30-40 minutes was really, really good. I quite like seeing all the characters, like how they all were. Obviously, some characters had a lot more time devoted to them, such as Deadshot and Harley. While characters like Killer Croc and Katana, they didn't get as much.
But they still got a bit of a backstory, which was
they got like
I
bits.
think, in all honesty, Killer Croc probably got the worst end of it, because his was kind of just like, oh yeah, he was treated like an animal, so then he became an animal, and I was like, okay, but...
So not Slipknot.
So literally not Slipknot. Oh, but yeah, actually Slipknot got the worst deal out of that. But anyway, the plot starts off as introducing them. We get to a bit of a start off from Batman vs Superman, which was interesting. We see Superman get a top that says "Remember" on the back, which I was like, oh,
Obviously, this is coming off from Batman vs Superman, in which Superman died at the end of it, and obviously we're seeing the effects. We're seeing the aftermath of that, in which they're talking about kind of assembling this team to combat like the next super threat. Although what members are part of the Suicide Squad, whether they could take on that massive threat.
Also, can we just talk about the fact that Waller was like, oh yeah, I've ate a lot of canaries. I was like, that makes no sense, but whatever. Yeah, she's like sat down eating, and she's like, right, okay, here's my folder. It's got all these people in it. Look at how bad Harley Quinn is. She's much worse than the Joker.
Yeah, her power is like her power is being crazy.
Literally, like being crazier than Joker, and I was like, that's a bit not possible, but you know, whatever. So she like just talks about all the characters. She's like, right, this person did this and that crap,
and then we're given like a flashback.
Yeah, we're given a flashback, and it'll like show you a bit about the characters, and then I
like the effects, you know, and it cut to the characters, and they'd have like their information up, and it was a really little cool. But we also have each character sort of having their own music video, essentially. I mean, the first like 10-15 minutes, it's one pop song, and then when one pop song finishes, the next one starts. I was getting a bit tired of it after like the first 15-20 minutes, and then later on they do not use them as much, but they're still there. And you know, I feel that obviously because the initial trailers did quite well using Bohemian Rhapsody, they felt, well, it worked in this small capacity, let's kind of ramp it up across the whole movie, and I don't think it worked as well as they wanted it to.
I was so disappointed when Bohemian Rhapsody wasn't it. Then again, I'm a sucker for Panic at the Disco, and they actually covered it, so I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And also, I think it's Leslie Gore, I'm not sure, she was the one that did the Don't Own Me song, which came on when like Harley Quinn was on the screen, and I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting.
Was that at the start when she was in the cage?
Yeah, that was at the start when she was in the cage, and I was like, oh, that's like a really interesting song for her, because she's like, oh, you don't own me. I'm like, but the Joker does.
I think it's trying to be like, you know, kind of like sarcastic, but at the same time, their relationship isn't that
different.
It's portrayed in a more positive light in this movie than
unhealthy
than in the comics and the cartoons of the past.
So that was interesting. Anyway, getting back to the topic, basically, Waller's like, oh yeah, I got this lady called the Enchantress, and I can stabby her heart, and she do what I say. And I was like, oh, okay, that seems interesting. And then we get introduced to a big, more like board meeting room, and then the Enchantress comes on, and she's like, oh yeah.
Well, they first bring in June Moon, who is the human
that found the Enchantress's like, I don't know, like doll thing, and she like ripped the head off it, and then she became like the Enchantress.
I think it's in the movie they were like sealed, like humans rebelled, and they sealed her and her brother in these like idols, and then any archaeologist, when they see a artifact, she proceeds to break it straight away, and then
the head off
she proceeds to break the head off straight away, and then obviously gets infected by the Enchantress.
Yeah.
Which there was a really cool effect in that scene.
Oh yeah, the hand thing was
where she puts her hand on the table and she
then flips up, and then it's the Enchantress. And I was like, oh, that was like really good editing. And I was like, yeah.
That was a really cool transition.
I also like the one joke where the Enchantress goes up to that guy and he's like, don't touch me, don't touch me. I was like, me?
Yeah. I think this movie does a lot better with sort of like adding a lot more humour to it. Because I have seen the previous two movies, Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman. In Batman vs Superman, there are no jokes whatsoever.
I think the comedy was so much better in the first like 30 minutes than like later on.
Yeah.
Because they tried to like pull off this comedy, but it's like a bit awkward, and you're like,
Some of the humour hits, some of it misses.
Yeah.
There are some funny scenes, I think.
It's like the Will Smith stuff where it was obviously like Will Smith eccentric jokes, and someone who doesn't follow the actor would be like, huh?
Well, I mean, I thought a lot of Harley Harley Quinn's sort of like quippy
like,
one-liners.
I'm known to be vexing, and it's like,
or when she first meets Katana and she...
It's like, hi, I love your perfume, it's stench of death. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, but for like every like one of those scenes, I really like the police guard at the start when he kept like, it's like, you know, I gave you that cookie that one time when he's got him at gunpoint. Really... It's like, yeah, like that kind of humor was really good. While some of the more like quippy one-liners, you know, stuff for the trailers, I think didn't work as well.
Anyway, going on from that, Waller is basically like, oh yeah, look, and she like proves it by like showing the Enchantress's power.
Yeah, in which she steals some secret documents from another country. She brings
them, and she's like, oh, we've been looking at these for months, well, years, and I was like, oh, okay. Later on, we get introduced to a bit of a threat that happens later on that evening of that day.
Yeah, because originally Enchantress is supposed to be on the team, but even before the team assembles, she turns evil, and there doesn't seem to be that much like security. Yeah, like all June has to do is when she's sleeping, she just whispers the word Enchantress, which is what she says in order to swap, and then she just whispers that, and then the Enchantress is off and away and scheming, also getting the other idol, which wasn't defended that well.
It was just kind of in a cupboard.
Yeah, in Amanda Waller's room.
We think, because remember she can teleport to different places.
True.
It might have been elsewhere.
Yeah, and then they send the Enchantress to sort of fix the problem.
Which she caused because she like made her brother like inhabit a guy, and she's like, feed on them.
I thought that was a bit weird. Like, I don't know how I would have done it, but like she just picked some random guy.
I was just like, here, you're my brother now.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking like it would have been more interesting if like she'd infected Rick. Like, I think Rick Flag is maybe the incubus. Maybe he's trying to fight it off. I mean, that would have been really
but
cool.
That's weird because then it's brother and sister.
Yeah, true. But like their kind of relationship when they were talking and like stroking each other in like the really creepy like black and white effect when they were talking.
Anyway, he gets like taken over by the brother, and he starts causing this terrorist attack in
that underground.
In the underground, and then Rick and June are sent to explode a bomb underneath. But because he can't get near it, because obviously it's a bomb, he's like, okay, Enchantress, you press this button, and then you like get out of the, because she can teleport obviously, and then she's like, she bolted or something like that.
Yeah, essentially she turns traitor straight away and kind of starts planning her own, because essentially she was revered or worshipped in the past. But then humans rebelled and kind of locked her and her brother away, and now she wants to build a machine that will end the humans.
Not that we don't really get much into that.
I mean, we see like a floating, like white spellish kind of thing, and at one point she says it's a spell rather than a machine. So I'm not fully sure what her plan was. But apparently she's going to end the world.
Apparently, yeah. Apparently she's going to kill all humans.
What do you think of the Enchantress, the June Moon? Did you think she was well acted?
It wasn't really enough to know how well she was acting. From what I gather, I don't know if the character's supposed to be like this nervous wreck that kind of just a bit like, and stumbles a little bit, is a little bit ditzy, but not in a cute way. It's kind of like one of those nervous shy girl kind of things. I was like, oh, okay, is this June's character, or is this just the actor being a bit like
From what I can gather, I think it's implied that before the possession she was maybe a bit adventurous and spirited, like you would imagine an archaeologist would be. But obviously being possessed has obviously like made her more reclusive. She doesn't like speaking. You can see with Rick that she doesn't like swapping into the Enchantress. She's very attached to him.
I'm just kind of like, I know that was like a character trait that she becomes like quiet and silent and stuff, but it was just the way she like acted it, if that makes sense. I'm not saying that she's a bad actress, like the actress who ever played her, but I'm just saying it was kind of like came across as awkward, if that makes sense. Like, you know, when there's like a natural fluent movement of an actor, and then there's that awkward kind of trying to do it. That's what I was getting from her, but I was like, we didn't really see her much in the film, so I was just kind of like,
Well, I mean, you only really see June at the start and a little bit at the end, and I do agree, I don't think they show enough of June to really get an establishment of her character. I mean, we know that she's a bit of a nervous wreck and that heavily relies on Rick, in which they have like a romantic connection. Obviously they've slept together at the start of the movie.
Can I just say, do you know what the Enchantress actually remind me of? Not gonna lie, remind me of Show, like Fukawa switching in Show, and then the man she's obsessed over being Togumi. I was just like, oh. Yeah,
that's true. Although when she swaps into the Enchantress, she's more focused on destroying all of humans. I quite liked the dirty, filthy Enchantress.
Yeah.
I thought that look was really cool, but I wasn't a massive fan of when June became like it was just Enchantress, but with like Aztec look up. I thought that was really weird.
Something that like really made me laugh is obviously special effects added in after, but there's like one scene where she's like wiggling around and it's just lights going everywhere. I was just like, I can't even imagine what it would be like with all the effects. Even with the effects, it was a little bit silly. So I was like, oh, I can't even imagine what it would have been like on set.
Yeah, I wasn't a massive fan of like the British heavily dubbed over voice later on as well. I thought it was a bit cliche, sort of like the villain needs to sound like an old British.
You butthurt
heavily
because
dubbed.
you're British.
Obviously.
Anyway, carrying on from what we're doing. Then obviously the subway gets taken over, and then they're like, okay, it's time, and then the Suicide Squad get like the thingy in their neck, a bomb, and it's like, yeah, you're gonna get killed.
Well, at this point, Amanda Waller, we don't know where she is at this point, but she's in like this room and she's sort of giving directions to everyone. And shortly before this as well, Rick Flag had actually gone to the prison and like met like all of the members of the squad.
Minus Harley,
just to kind of like get a feel for him. There was a really great scene with Deadshot where he was testing the weapons out.
Oh, and when he was like, I want my daughter to go to like the best schools, and he's like, right, I see people listening, but I don't see anyone writing shit down. And I was like, that's pretty funny.
Yeah, that's like a classic Will Smith kind of humour that he's done in movies before. It was a really good little character.
And I like the fact that he like low-key flirted with Amanda. He was like, see you later, sweet cheeks, or something like that. And then he like kissed the ear, and I was like, oh no, you don't want to be doing that to this kind of woman.
But it was at this point where they sort of bring them all in, and we get the team actually meet, and we get Deadshot.
Straight up, we get Deadshot, Killer Croc, Harley Quinn, and Boomerang, and El Diablo. Wait, no, not Boomerang, El Diablo, yeah. Yeah,
well, Boomerang gets dropped in from that plane. He gets dropped in from the plane in like travel package, which is funny.
I heard something that was like interesting later on. I was like, he's in the asylum, like the same asylum that
No, he's brought in from
I know, but I'm saying like at the end of it he ends up being so I thought that was like interesting. I was like, oh, so they didn't send him back to like wherever he came from. I was like, oh.
Yeah, well it was obviously like we see in the flashback he was like robbing banks.
Oh yeah.
And he'd come over to America, and then we get a quick scene with the Flash in it.
And I was so happy.
Portrayed by Ezra Miller, and he only gets like maybe a minute screen time, but I thought it was really good.
Not gonna lie, fangirled when he was on screen. I was like, and Jack was like, you okay? And I was like, yeah.
He got one line. I thought the suit looked fine. I know a lot of people aren't a massive fan of it because it's more mechanical compared to his like latex version.
Are we going to spend like 20 minutes talking about the Flash? Just this 10-second scene. Sorry, I love the Flash so much. I love his outfit as well. I think it's maybe a bit too metallic, like metal.
Yeah, I can understand that.
So I was like, but I think it works well serving its purpose. Because if you have to think about it, those were the kind of things that was like in the 80s and stuff, and they're trying to modernise all these kind of like heroes. So I was like, it kind of makes sense in this modern day. So I was like, yeah, I can buy it.
But yeah, I thought it was a really great use of him. I mean, having like these characters that are going to appear in their own movies later, and obviously the Justice League, we're getting like... It makes the world feel lived in. Like, you know, these characters don't just suddenly appear in the Justice League. You know, they've been active years before that movie. I mean, I would have really liked it if, like, Wonder Woman had another cameo in it.
Yeah, that would have been nice, actually, because I know that in Superman and Batman, or whatever it is, Superman vs. Batman, whatever, apparently they didn't utilise her very well. But I haven't seen it, so I can't really...
She is the best part of the movie. Like, her screen time, she maybe gets about 20 minutes. She gets a decent amount. She's not like the main character of the movie, but the scenes that she does get portrays her well. She does a really good job. The final fight scene at the end, like, she's the best part about it when she gets introduced and her music hits. It's really great. Would definitely have liked to have seen her in this, maybe in one of the other backstories, maybe catching someone. Just the scene that we got with Flash was great.
Anyway, then we get them all in the...
there's
an outside base, like...
Yeah, they meet in, like, the area just outside of the city that's been taken over by the Enchantress. And we also get introduced to the final member of the squad, who had no introduction before this, Slipknot.
Yeah, and he basically goes like, yeah, you betray me, you die. You run away, you die. Well, you vex or annoy me, you die. And then Harley Quinn comes in with her quippy, I'm known to be vexing. And then
Well, I
you're
mean,
like,
Slipknot's introduced by punching a woman in the
oh
face.
yeah, literally, like, so I can't remember what she said, something stupid, and I was like, what the hell? And then he punches her, and I was like, to be honest, I can't even be angry at that, because movie.
Well, he punches her in the face, and then he says that
She angered me or something
he
like that.
didn't like her mouth.
She had like a mouth on her. Yeah, that's what he said.
Yeah.
She had a mouth on her. And I was like, oh, okay, well,
I mean,
guy's not gonna survive long.
I like the look. I like the ropes they had and like the string
They
in the
look
hair.
like the bands that people used to make bracelets out of.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, he's got those in his hair.
But the way he's
cool.
introduced, it's obviously clear that he's not.
He's not going to survive long, because it was either going to be the town versus him, or it was going to be Harley Quinn versus him. Let's be honest.
Well, I mean, because obviously all the characters have met, they start like talking and like putting their clothes on. There's a bit of a fan servicey scene with Harley.
Oh
where
yeah, that
everyone's
kind of
looking
annoyed
at.
me. I was like,
But Harley's always been a bit of a fan servicey character.
Mm-mm.
And I mean, obviously, there's a nice shot where she turns and we get a wonderful look at her
boobies. Right, this is something only a girl would notice, or someone that has like incredible detail. And I was like looking at a bra and I was like, oh my god, that's so nice. And it's like basically the cups are black, but the rest of the bra is red. And I was like, that is a nice bra. And it was kind of like, I'm getting too into Harley Quinn's bra. And it was like kind of like the sheen fabric that kind of had like a little, I don't know, I'm getting too into it, but
I'm the boy, but I didn't.
I noticed it because it was Harley Quinn's colour, and I was like, oh my god, that's like a really nice. Also, I like the fact that she saw her old costume and she was like, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
We got to see her old costume and she like picked it up.
Yeah, it was in the flashback for a little bit. That
made me happy. I like the hat. I actually like the hat physics.
Yeah,
I don't know how it managed to work, but I like the hat physics.
Yeah, I don't know how well it would have worked if
in
an extended period, but for just like a quick 5 seconds, we get to see the sort of her in the iconic look. I thought it worked quite well.
Yeah, it did. Then we get introduced to like obviously all of them getting all of this stuff back.
They're all getting their equipment.
We see Boomerang with his pink unicorn.
Yes. I didn't.
Which I think was a little nod to Deadpool, but who knows?
I didn't personally understand it.
I didn't either. I did because I knew the thing about Deadpool, but I was like, if you haven't watched Deadpool, it kind of like just makes no sense. It's just there, just to be like that quippy line every now and then, or that quippy little joke. I was like, okay. Loved Killer Croc when he got his hoodie on and he was like Batman. I was like, yes.
I mean, Killer Croc didn't have much to do in this movie, I felt.
I think he was the funniest.
Like, they kind of realised since at the end, like, he's more relevant in the final fight. I thought he was alright. I mean, to me, he seemed not big enough to be Killer Croc. Like, he seemed like, whenever I think of Killer Croc, the iconic comic book and cartoon, I think of huge, hulking, massive, like, he towers over people. And this one, he just seemed to be level with them. He didn't seem to...
I think Slipknot is probably like the same height as Killer Croc, but don't hold me on that. But when I think about Slipknot, I remember him being huge, and I don't know if that was what the camera was like angled at, and they were trying to make him like this menacing looking person, even though he kind of just looked a bit like a dick. But not a bad dick. He looked good, but it was just kind of like,
Well, it was weird because when I saw Killer Croc in it, I thought, he's going to be like the ferocious, upfront fighter. He's going to be the one who tears the enemy apart. But his fighting style isn't really portrayed very well
what we would think, kind of. Anyway,
he just kind of punches and kicks. What do you think about El Diablo? Since he was also in the squad?
I love him. I agree with him. Like, whatever. I know that quite a few people, like my partner, is like, oh, but he wasn't doing that much, and I was like, yeah, but he killed his wife and his kids. He's probably a bit jarred to wanting to use his power again, kind of thing. And I was just like, it's interesting to see how far his anger can go to make him push over the edge, kind of thing. Because people can do quite a lot to him without him getting overboard, and I thought that was interesting. But then obviously one thing led to another, and he eventually uses his power, and I thought it was interesting. But from the beginning we saw that Boomerang would be a dick to El Diablo, and I was like, oh, okay then.
Well, I mean, I thought the guy who portrayed El Diablo did a pretty good job with what he's got. I wish he'd been given a little bit more, because obviously we kind of get the flashback where obviously he's become, after his misuse of his powers, you could say, he's sort of become a pacifist, where he doesn't want to fight anymore, he doesn't want to hurt anyone anymore, he doesn't want to use his powers anymore. He's kind of just like content with just sitting in that little pod that he's got to keep him away from, or using his powers on people. And he's very much like, we meet him when he's at the point where he's kind of just just waiting
Giving up,
waiting.
kinda, yeah.
He's essentially waiting to die, essentially. And obviously, I mean, throughout most of the film, he's kind of inactive. He's kind of just standing around. You know, he talks a little bit, but we never really get like that camaraderie, I think, with the team, which obviously becomes very important later on, especially in the final fight scene.
I want to know when he got his tattoos.
Yeah, those tattoos was something special.
I liked it. Well, not everyone, but like quite a few people were like, oh, I don't know. And I liked it. I thought it was interesting and added diversity to the team.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about this movie, this is quite a diverse cast of races and genders. Because, I mean, obviously you've got Harley, who's obviously a female, but then, you know, you've got Black Guy, who's one of the main characters. I loved seeing
a POC character, like a POC person play a character, and now it's like, this is the problem. All I can see of is Deadshot being a POC character now.
Yeah.
Even though in canon he is a white person, I was just like, oh. But Will Smith really brought like a whole new character to it, and really created this new kind of, I wouldn't say new, but I'd say really created the movie version of Deadshot.
I can't see a different version of Deadshot now working after, in terms of the movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it is quite a diverse cast. I mean, you've got a Japanese female swordswoman.
I love that.
You've got obviously El Diablo, who's Latina. I mean, you've got Captain Boomerang, who's Australian. I mean, this is quite a diverse cast.
So that was pretty cool, and I was like, oh, that's really nice. Anyway, getting back onto the plot.
Yes. Obviously, at this point, they're taken on the helicopter, and this is when we're introduced to Katana, who is not a villain, ironically enough.
She's kind of a superhero.
Yeah, she's
a B-lister.
Yeah, she's been in a few teams. She's been in The Outsiders. She's been in The Birds of Prey. She's been a member of the Justice League at one point or the other.
She's been a member of my heart.
She's also a member of the Suicide Squad in this, but she's a voluntary member. She's not got the bomb in her brain the rest of them.
I was like, I knew that it wasn't going to happen, but I was like low-key ready for her to just like flip out and then end up like slicing everyone's head off. And obviously that wasn't going to happen, but if I was her and I had that team as my teammates, oh yeah, would I have done it?
Well, I mean, she was kind of there as the bodyguard of Rick.
Yeah,
she was there to protect him and make sure that none of them stood out of line. I thought her introduction was a bit like she just turns up. She kind of just turns up, and then Rick flags like, oh yeah, this is Katana. You know, she's got a soul-stealing sword. They never really explain the sword. We never see the sword actually work. We never see it steal any souls.
I loved the fact that she was speaking in Japanese.
Yes.
I think it was Japanese.
Yes, it would be.
And she wasn't speaking like English. I loved that. Like, obviously she can understand English, or she wouldn't have like understood flag. But I loved the fact that she spoke like fluent Japanese instead of like moving to this standard of every like different cultured person who has a different language having to speak English, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously that she's bilingual. She can speak Japanese and English, but obviously she prefers her native tongue. And I mean, we do get a little bit of her backstory.
I think we get a bit of a backstory.
We get a flashback with her in Japan where she's hunting down her husband's murderers.
It's like you watched him die or something like that. And I was just like,
I mean, it was a quick little scene. It was a nice little scene. I mean, the actress who portrayed Katana did a good job, and I mean, I really like the
oh my
outfit.
God, I just realised, you know, at the end of the film when Harley Quinn like slices Enchantress in like two, well, not really, but takes her heart with a sword, does that mean because the sword technically killed her, does that mean the Enchantress's soul is in the sword?
Well, I mean, Enchantress doesn't die technically because later on, obviously, they squeeze Rick squeezes the heart out of it. So I don't think he does enough of a blow to make Soul Taker steal the soul.
I just thought that would be interesting. I was just like, oh. Anyway, after that, get into the city and we get a bit of a look at what's happened, what's happening, and we go through all the characters having a little talk and being like, you're bullshitting, this isn't a terrorist attack, because they were told it was a terrorist attack.
Well, I mean, first thing is they have like that fight scene with those humans who've been turned into those weird alien-like things. I mean, I thought the alien design was really like bland and boring. It was kind of like they crash and then they just like start straight up in a fight. I was like, okay. I was like, oh, okay, we're getting a first fight. Like, it's going to be dead interesting. And it was so, like, it wasn't boring. It was just getting tiresome after a while because I didn't feel like the characters really showcased all the skills that they could. Like, we saw dead shots, obviously, which was amazing.
But we didn't see stuff like Killer Croc actually using something he's like notoriously known for, which is like his teeth and stuff like that and his claws. We saw a bit of him punching people, but that wasn't much. And I think we saw Boomerang like
He fights with his boomerangs, but like
Oh my
melee,
gosh,
he like swings them around and
we
stabs.
totally forgot to mention the best part of the film, when Slipknot dies.
Yes.
Yeah, basically Boomerang and Slipknot are like, well, Boomerang's like, okay, I think it's a joke, I think it's mind games, and then Slipknot's like, okay, and then I can't remember exactly.
Boomerang tries to escape first, but Katana's on him straight away. But with the distraction, Slipknot like uses his grapple and tries to escape.
And then it goes boom.
Rick Flag has like a phone app in which he's got all of their faces on, and all he has to do is press the face, and then they explode.
And then Harley Quinn came in with a quirky line saying, "That's a killer app," and I was just like, Anyway, so they fight these like weird alien people. We don't really see the skill set of the
Well, I mean,
characters.
I think the stakes aren't there properly because before this scene, Amanda Waller essentially sold them up as, you know, they take a shot to the head and they keep going. But in this, we see like Harley Quinn and her baseball bat taking them down pretty easily.
I would say I would complain about the first fight scene because I know that obviously gymnastics and like the flipping and stuff, I was low-key like expecting Harley Quinn to do this cartwheel and kill a bitch with her heels, but obviously I was like, that's not gonna happen. But I was hoping, but later on we get like a nice Harley Quinn fight scene, so that made me happy. But yeah, we don't really see much of the characters using their entire skill set, I find, and it was kind of upsetting to me because I was like, oh, well, they don't see him as fearful, if you know what I mean. They don't seem like these villains. They just kind of seem there. They don't even seem like they're having fun because they're like, oh, we're going to kill a whole lot of people. Like Harley Quinn says that or something. And they're like, oh, yeah. And they like, well, not enjoy it, but some of them enjoy it. And I was like, oh, yeah, this is going to be fun. And then they got there and they didn't look like they were having any fun at all. So I was like, oh.
Obviously, they're under stress because obviously they've got the bombs in their brains. So they're obviously thinking about that. I mean, I think you do get a sense that obviously some are enjoying it. I mean, I agree that it's kind of not well portrayed in like the fight scenes. I'd also like to mention that obviously throughout this we've also got the subplot with Joker. In which he's actually trying to locate Harley and actually save her and kind of try and bring her back to his side essentially. What do you think of the scenes with Joker?
He laughs a lot.
Yeah, so I wasn't a massive fan of his laugh. It's sort of like kit.
It's a lot of breathing. Also, there was like the constant of when he wasn't talking, he would like groan slightly, and I was like, oh.
Is that just not Jared Leto getting heavily into the part?
Literally, yeah. Anyway, so I don't know. It was just him being like, oh, Harley, I want Harley, and I was like.
Well, you see that he's very much. I don't know if you can say it's love, but obviously very much.
It's like he needs her by his side, whereas in comics and stuff, he would be like, I don't really care, like, if she dies or anything, but if anyone, like, goes near her or, like, brings them to her side, he's on it straight away.
Well, obviously Harley's quite obsessive with him in this movie as well. He also sort of shares an obsession with her as well.
He shares some kind of obsession, obviously, because he goes through a lot to get her back. He, like, goes to the people that did the chips, he, like, goes there, holds the man hostage and his wife hostage to stop them from, like, blowing up Harley and all that kind of stuff. He flies all the way to... So it shows that he does have some dedication to her. Also, the fact he saved her, I don't know if that was intentional or unintentional, but he pushed her out of the airplane so they didn't crash. I don't know if it was intentional or not because he kind of went, I don't know if that was just Jared Leto being in character or if that was, like, just them supposed to be, oh no, I'm not going to see you again, or oh no, she got out, I didn't. I
think it's so they can play it more ambiguous so that you could read it either way. You could read it as him, you know, trying to save her, or him, you know, trying to save his own life. Because, I mean, in the flashback, despite obviously him not abusing her as much in this, or, you know, having genuine love of her, in that scene with Batman, he does leave her behind. He does, you know, save his own skin.
She's like, Pudding, I can't swim or something like that, and then they go in and pisses off and Harley's left alone midway through the fucking front window. She kisses Batman. That's
no, Batman kisses her, but it's
This seems like a running theme. I feel like Batman's going to try and kiss everyone.
Well, he was giving her CPR. It was to save her life.
Yeah, I know, but she took a bit of advantage to that. She's like,
He also punched her in the face.
He did also punch her in the face.
There's a lot of women punching in this movie, I've noticed.
Can't argue there. But then we have the great Amanda Waller, so that makes
Yeah,
sense.
so what did you think about Amanda Waller in this
I
film?
thought she was pretty badass. Like, as through the words of Deadshot, that's gangster.
I thought Viola Davis did a really good job with the character. She felt pretty good from the comic adaptation. I thought obviously she's not as big
Bulky,
as
yeah.
kind of the iconic Amanda, but yeah, she had like that stern kind of ironclad will of Amanda, which I thought was good. And I definitely do want to see her in more films.
Yeah, she was a very good actress for Amanda Waller. She literally, like, I know this sounds really weird, but when I think of Arkham Asylum and then I see her, they look literally the same, just one's like a bit fatter than the other, and I was just like, Like,
Yeah.
they really went to town with Amanda Waller, and it made me happy to see, like, such dedication for a character that is, like, well known, but not, like, well received, if that makes sense. Kind of like, you know, when you go to a convention and you'll see like Deadpools and Harley Quinns and stuff, you'll never really see an Amanda Waller cosplayer. So I thought it was interesting that it went so in depth with her kind of costume, because they could have made her like this sexy looking woman, but they kept to this kind of like standard of what Amanda looks like, and it made me really happy.
As how we see women, she's obviously not. She's not the perfect portrayal of women, and in her own opinion, I don't think she'd care anyway. I mean, this Amanda Waller is actually is very ruthless, as we see when she shoots down her own people.
Yeah, she shoots like 6 people just because they weren't authorized to be there.
Yes.
And I was like, wow, and I thought that was interesting. She's a total badass. She's crazy cool, and I'm like, we need that kind of.
Well, she's very in control, I'd say. She's very obsessed with, you know, making sure everything goes her way.
Anyway, back on to what was happening. We get a load of bullcrap of them going through the town.
Well, throughout the entire film at this point, they've been told that they're picking up someone, and it turns out that when they do eventually get to that person, it's Amanda, and they're not aware.
They think it's like Morgan Freeman or something. I can't remember. And they get there and they're not aware, and they talk about it a bit, and then they come out and everyone's like, damn, we can kill them all here. And Amanda's like, I already thought this through, and pulls her phone out, which has them all highlighted, ready for them to die if anyone pulls anything.
I know this was mentioned by another group called Red Letter Media, but I thought the scene was funny where she's got her hand on the phone and her fingers are like pressing down, so it looks like she's actually touching like some of the faces. I thought that was really funny. Like, I think they could have maybe done that scene better, because it looked like her hands were actually pressed on their faces.
And then obviously we get a pretty funny joke from Killer Croc where he's like, I like her, or something like that. It was pretty funny.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I think this, because this is essentially the second act where they pick her up. I thought this second act wasn't. This is where I think the movie kind of
goes a bit down.
It starts to fall apart, I think, here. Where, I mean, I really liked like the introductions to everyone. I thought they did a really good job. But at this point, we've got the team together, but I don't really get like a sense of camaraderie. I don't get a sense that, like, you know, they've really bonded. You know, they've kind of just had fight scene after fight scene. They've had a couple of quips, but nothing major.
And then we get to them with their second task, which is stopping the Enchantress.
Well, we have sort of like the final scene with the Joker before that.
Yeah, he basically, after everything that he's done, like disabling Harley's bomb and finding her and everything, he texts her and says, and he's like, oh, done, and she's like, okay, and this is all while there was like fighting going on, because the helicopter that Amanda thought she was getting on was actually like taken over, and it was actually the Joker inside. So Harley Quinn's like, oh yeah, and she gets on, and then we see a bit of a dynamic between Joker and Harley being like, oh.
Yeah, which we've talked about, the way it pushed her.
But we get the scene where Amanda Waller's like, I'll give your daughter like education and stuff like that.
And I'll let you free.
And I'll let you free if you shoot Harley Quinn. And we think for a while she's shot, and then she comes up and she's like, I missed.
I mean, I didn't buy for a second that he was going to shoot her.
Same, yeah.
But I don't think that scene's earned. Like, he talks about, like, you know, like, because if you think about it, this is the daughter. This is like his main motivation. And, you know, it's his own freedom. And apart from a couple of scenes where they've talked together, I just don't get the feel that he's that close with Harley. So when he intentionally misses, I just don't feel it. I mean, I think in character he would have just taken the shot. obviously they're not going to kill Harley here. I just feel that the moment
Yeah.
wasn't earned.
We don't really get that, like, Deadshot and Harley relationship kind of thing. I saw them more as friends, but not very close friends. Like, well, a bit closer than everyone else, but not, like, so together that he wouldn't shoot her kind of thing.
Well, I mean, at this point, the movie is like moving at like a really, really fast pace. Like
I feel they went very slow with the fight scenes and made that lengthy, and then they rushed, like not rushed, but made it very quick.
Well, this is the point in the movie where they do slow down a little bit, which is, you know, obviously they realise what's happened. Harley's like, she thinks the Joker's dead at this point. Everyone's kind of really down, and this is where Deadshot kind of realises, you know, the Enchantress plot, and this is where they're all like, you know, we're done, we're done, we're going in this bar and we're just, you know, we're gonna drink because you're just gonna blame everything on us. And this is where I think is sort of like the really like good moment of the piece, where they all sit down and they're all like just having a drink and talking. It's where the movie, like, you know, really like starts to
develop.
It starts to give like some humanity to, like, you know, these groups of individuals.
Also, the fact of the first helicopter that came, Amanda got on and she's like, we'll get another one for you, and then that gets shot down, and then Enchantress takes Amanda Waller back and takes her over and everything.
Yeah.
So, all while the stuff with the Suicide Squad is going on.
Obviously, they're not aware of this.
Yeah, obviously they're not aware of that. So when they have this talk, we get into El Diablo's character.
Yeah, we get his backstory. Because, I mean, at this point, they've had a few fight scenes where he's kind of just like, he's just kind of stood in the background.
Passive.
He's not helped them out. They've called him out on it. They've like said, why have you not helped us out? And then there's a scene later where Deadshot like
pushes him over the edge,
and he eventually uses his powers. This is where we kind of get the reveal of his story, which is a nice touching scene.
Yeah, which was interesting, and we get kind of like a pickup from Harley and all that kind of stuff, and she's like, "Oh, we're all ugly on the inside," and she's like, "There, except him, he's ugly on the outside," and then Killer Croc's like, "I'm beautiful." And she's like, "Yes, you are," and then basically Rick comes in. He goes, "Did you get to the part in the file where it mentioned I was sleeping with her?" And he talks a bit about like what happened with June. Breaks the phone and then hands Deadshot loads of letters.
That was an interesting scene in which we see Captain Boomerang like shoot off as soon as he gets the chance,
with a logger in hand,
which was a cute little character moment, very fitting for the character, I thought. But yeah, this is the point where it kind of comes to like the final like climax. This is like, you know, the big showdown. This is also where we get like, you know, perhaps the only other scene with Katana that's relevant. Yeah. Where it cuts to her crying and she's talking to her husband in the sword, which is a nice scene. But again,
we don't feel that
we've not really been introduced to Katana properly. Like, she's been there, she's like been in the fight scenes, she's been, you know, here throughout the whole movie, but she's not done anything. The movie's never really revolved around her. It's a nice little scene, but it just comes out of nowhere again. But yeah, I mean, the final fight scene, you know, it's kind of a bit bland.
It felt like an anime fight scene, and it felt very like...
Well, I mean, we do get a little bit of interesting at the start, where the Enchantress sort of gives them visions of what they've always wanted. These were all somewhat interesting. We only really see two, which is, we see three actually. We see Deadshot and his desire to kill Batman.
Which was interesting.
Yeah,
because we thought it would have been about his like daughter. But no, his main priority and dream is to kill Batman.
Yeah, it's just that little hint of darkness. And, you know, I mean, I think the movie, it does such a way of like sympathizing with the villains a bit too much. We never really remember, oh yeah, these are bad guys, these have, you know, done really terrible things in the past, apart from Joker, obviously. But yeah, that little scene
wants some beef.
But that little scene, you know, just like, you know, hints that there is still that malice to Floyd, Deadshot.
And then we get Harley being a housewife with curlers in her hair.
Yeah, and Jared Leto.
And Jared Leto being Jared Leto.
Yeah, I mean, it's just I suppose it's somewhat interesting, you know, she just wants to have a normal life with Joker. But I thought
she liked like you said, the crazy...
Yeah, I mean, I always saw like, but again, different interpretation, but I always saw Harley as being in love with that jokey side, being in love with the Joker, not whoever the man who was that became the Joker.
Something that I found really interesting is in Harley's backstory, we see them jump into the chemical thing. I can't remember for the life of me what it's called.
Ace Chemicals is where Joker becomes Joker.
But we see that Harley jumps into it and nothing really changes. she maybe becomes a bit paler.
I think it's just to imply that obviously that she's willing to devote her life to Joker.
Yeah. But what I'm trying to get is here we see the Joker and we see that it's like makeup and hairspray and stuff, and like so that really has nothing to push him over the edge in his backstory if you think about it, because the icing on the cake of his backstory was him becoming this horrific clown looking thing, and that literally driving him mad because he'd been through so much already. But we don't have that jump of the edge if it's just makeup kind of thing.
I mean, it's hard to really say because we don't know much about this Joker's backstory. I mean, even in the comics, it's kind of left ambiguous as to what made him into the Joker. So, I mean, I think it was just a little scene to, you know, kind of like cement her as the Joker's paramour. Obviously, we get like that scene where they're kind of like sort of in their embrace together with the goo,
with the goo,
which does appear in the trailer. So, you know, it very much well could be a scene that's been, you know, cut so much, because I mean we've heard about like a lot of Jared Leto's scenes were cut. I mean even the flashback with her sort of becoming obsessed with him is it's like, you know, super quick. It's literally like maybe 30-40 seconds.
Yeah, it's literally she gets him a cat and he's like, I want a machine gun, and she's like, okay, and that's literally what happens. Like, not even gonna lie, I was like, okay.
I mean this could have been like, you know, a full 5 minute, maybe like even I'd probably say a 5 minute scene where, you know, it's like given a bit more time to develop, but you know we get to see more of Harleen Quinzel, you know, before she came Harley.
Anyway, and then we get El Diablo's backstory. Not backstory. We get his daydream kind of thing.
Oh yeah, but he's the one who snaps out of it.
Yeah, he's like, I can't change what I did.
In which he has a fight with Enchantress's brother Incubus.
And he's
in which he reveals what he really is.
He's like an Aztec god or something.
He turns into like
Don't say anything offensive.
He turns into like a fire demon, and he fights with Incubus. But he's
he doesn't look like that classic kind of.
Yeah, he's not the Christian devil. He's more.
He very looks like Aztec.
He's more based off his Latina heritage. I assume. I don't know that like heritage that well, but yeah, I mean at this point, like he has the fight with Incubus.
Killer Croc's underneath getting the bomb.
Yeah, he's getting the bomb, sorting that out. When it's time to go, they blow. This is also at the point where Diablo sacrifices himself. It is a good moment. Like it does come full circle with the character. Obviously, a man who lost everything because of his own actions. He now wants to redeem himself.
He's like, oh, I'm gonna save my family. I'm like, they're not really a family. You didn't really come close much.
Again, it's difficult to know without the full cut. Yeah, at this point, you don't get this feel of like, you know, he treats
would die for them kind of thing.
I mean,
I guess it does make sense if he had nothing to live for. He was like, oh, I don't have anything to live for. So
there's like a glimmer of it, you know, when he comes out to him and he tells him about his tragic backstory. Like you can see that, you know, he's starting to build that friendship with him, but there's just not enough of those moments.
And everyone's kind of like, oh yeah, it's okay kind of thing. Like Harley's even like, own that shit or some shit like that. I was like, oh, well, I guess they're kind of bonding, but the only real kind of bonding that we see between the squad is probably Harley and Deadshot, and even that's a bit scarce. That's only friend, can't really see a relationship coming out of that. And we see a quick like little thing with Katana and Boomerang, which was like weird, but
it's sort of one-sided. It's Boomerang flirting with her and Katana sort of just ignoring him
in front of her husband's soul.
Yes.
So
interesting enough, I remember like there is a scene I think in the trailer where you see like the sword glowing gold or something, implying that obviously there was a scene where she uses its abilities.
It's so like a cop out though when they put that kind of stuff in the trailer and then you don't see it in the film.
I think you can feel that this movie has been like heavily cut and spliced together. It gives that feeling of sort of like cut and assembled. Like it's very it's very jumpy, and it's, you know, when from one scene to another. Like I'm remembering like in the trailer, I remember the scene where she smashes the window and she takes the hand purse. And when that's played in the movie, it kind of just cuts to that, and then it like
it's like a really awkward just there kind of
it
scene.
feels like it was sort of made for the trailer and then not well adapted into the movie. Some of those scenes play off very much like that. Pretty much at this point we've had like the final fight scene with the Enchantress. Obviously they have an extended fight scene where they fight her by melee, and then she's kind of just like, she's done, knocks everyone aside,
which could have just done at the beginning, but you know, but movie.
I think that's the problem when they've chosen like a really powerful magical threat. Like it becomes difficult to like give the idea that, you know, Harley could fight this threat. Captain Boomerang could fight this threat. Deadpool could fight. Deadshot could fight this
Literally,
threat.
the only person that I think could have stood a chance would have been El Diablo if she was like.
Well, I can kind of buy sort of like Katana because obviously she's got the sword.
Katana,
I can buy Diablo because obviously he's an actual metahuman. Not many of these people are metahumans, and obviously Killer Croc because obviously
he's big buff and got teeth.
But when only half your team feels like it could potentially take on this threat, it's not a good sign.
Also, can I just talk about like when they were fighting the brother, I can't remember his name. Incubus. Right, when they were fighting him, they were like shooting him and stuff. I'm like, I'm pretty sure he like uses metal and it doesn't affect him.
I know, but at this point, they're just trying to chuck everything at him. I mean, that's why El Diablo sacrificed himself because he's like the only one who can really go toe to toe with him. And even then, we're seeing like Diablo getting pushed back. I mean, there's a scene where Boomerang chucks like one boomerang. He doesn't chuck many boomerangs in this movie. He chucks one at Incubus and it instantly gets exploded. So it just proves that his usefulness to the team
was low.
I mean, I thought Jai Courtney, who played Captain Boomerang, he did good job with like the little bit he was given.
Oh my god, we totally forgot to mention the part where he like disappeared and then he came back for no reason.
Yeah, he escapes from the bar, and then the next scene he kind of just rejoins them, no questions asked.
I'm kind of just like,
It's it was so they could have their awesome walk, their slow-mo walk with the whole gang together.
Anyway, after all of that, being like, oh, we're fucked kind of thing, and her being like, oh, you can join me, I'll give you one last chance, like you. And Harley's like, oh well, my pudding died today, and I kind of want my pudding back. And she kneels, like is about to kneel down to her, and then she grabs the sword and is like, but I have one problem. You hurt my friends or something like that. And then she like grabs the heart, slashes and grabs the heart with. This is Katana's sword, by the way. Slashes the heart and grabs it.
Yeah, I mean, I thought again that was stakes not really too high because I mean there was a little something with the fact that obviously she was depressed with Joker's death or implied death, and there's the idea that she would obviously maybe turn on the team if she had a chance to get Joker back. But I think that when she's kneeling down, there's like this really quick cut of her looking at the sword, and then it cuts to Enchantress while she's speaking to it, and I think that they shouldn't have had
because you knew then.
Yeah, as soon as you look down and you see the sword, you're like, oh okay, now we know that she's gonna betray her. She's gonna get close just to slash her. But overall, yeah, I just want to they save the day. They all get taken back.
They throw a bomb thing and shoot it, and then that spell gets wrecked.
Yeah, Enchantress gets to live at the end. Well, the human self, June.
Yeah.
She gets to live. No longer being Enchantress, she's lost her power. She doesn't get taken over by the spirit anymore. Whether the spirit will return or not, we'll have to see in a later movie.
Who knows?
They all get taken back to prison.
Yeah, Amanda's like, no. And they all get like one thing, like Deadshot gets a visit with his daughter, so we see like the dedication there. We get Harley Quinn with an espresso machine.
Yes.
And we get Killer Croc with
he gets his TV.
And he like sits down like, I think he was like eating chicken or something watching TV, and I was just like, me?
And Boomerang gets nothing.
Oh yeah, because he was like, I'm walking out here free, and she's like, I will kill you. Not literally, obviously, but she said, obviously being Amanda, she said some kind of things.
And then at the end we have Joker break out Harley.
Yeah, and the one thing that really annoyed me about that, when they're like in the police costumes, they have Joker written on the front of it in duct tape, and I wanted it to be like, oh, who's this mysterious person? Like, obviously it was kind of like obvious, but I wanted it to be like, oh, who's this mysterious person? They're trying to like play it off like mysterious because he's got the mask on. I was like, but he's got Joker written on the bloody front.
I don't necessarily think it was mysterious. I think they were going for kind of like that obvious.
I know, but the little slow reveal of the mask, I was like, as if I'm not gonna know who it is from the fucking duct tape Joker on the front of it.
To be honest, I can actually see kind of like Joker doing that, where he'd like, he'd make sure that he'd have his own name written on it. Like, I can see Joker
was
doing
Panda
that.
there? I can't remember if the panda was there.
Well, obviously they're all wrapped up. So
yeah. Aww.
But yeah, I mean, and that was the movie essentially.
Yeah,
we get like a little scene at the end with Bruce Wayne meeting Amanda.
And he's like, oh yeah. By the way, he was like, oh yeah, count on me next time. I'm like, where the hell were you this entire time? Then there was a floating fucking white thing in the sky.
Yeah, this was potentially a world-ending threat, and there was no Batman.
There was no Wonder Woman, no
Flash. I mean, you established Flash is in it. Surely he'd see the massive light in the sky and be like,
And we can't even say that we're like dealing with Superman because we already know that this is set after that. So
I mean, you could argue that it's a comic book movie. You've just got to kind of like suspend your disbelief. Maybe if they'd mentioned like that these guys are off doing something else, maybe that would have been like a little. I don't think it was needed.
The fact that Batman was like, well, not Batman, but Wayne obviously was like, oh, call me next time. I'm like, yeah, but where the fuck were you at this time?
Well, I mean, I don't think he implied that he was Batman, but obviously Amanda knows that he's Batman because at the end she's like, oh no, you're working late nights, maybe you should stop that. And the final scene, it's like, it doesn't add much. It kind of just, she gives him the file of metahumans in which we see like Aquaman, Flash, and we see other names as well.
June, we see June.
Yeah, we see the Enchantress, obviously implying that he's going to go build the team in the next movie, Justice League. So it's just like a little hint for what's later on.
Do you know something? I haven't watched Batman vs Superman, but something that interests me is he's like, oh yeah, I'm going to make a team of these metahumans. I'm like, but what about Superman though?
This is what inspires him is Superman's death. He's like, because he realizes that he was wrong about Superman at the end, and he's like, I want to do right by Superman. I want to, find others like him, and hopefully build a team.
Superman ain't dead.
Well, Superman, he'll come back, obviously.
Superheroes always come back. Anyway,
just real quick, final thoughts. What did you overall think of the movie?
I thought it was good. I enjoyed some of it.
I mean, we've been very critical on this.
We have, but there are things that I do enjoy. Like, I enjoy Deadshot's portrayal. I enjoy Amanda Waller's character. I actually enjoy the gist of the movie, apart from the magic threat you stated. I enjoyed the gist of the movie. I enjoyed the squad being together, and I think that they did have fun. But you don't obviously get that friendship there, but it was still interesting. And I don't know, I loved the final fight, but I also hated it at the same time because it felt so, I don't know how to put it, but it felt like everyone was getting one turn kind of thing, and then you get, but I don't know, it just seemed cool, but it also seemed a bit weird kind of thing. And I loved the dream flashback. I loved all the flashbacks and the delving into people's character. Loved the Harley Quinn flashbacks, loved the Deadshot flashbacks. Personally, absolutely loved the scene, even if it was ironically, where they're like in the club and Joker's like being a bit of a dumbass and being like, oh, you want beef, that kind of thing. I thought that was funny, but ironically, I loved it about the film, and I can't imagine it not being in the film kind of thing now, because it made like such an impact. But obviously there was like a couple things that annoyed me, like the gun having the hate and love, and then the shot that he makes is love, and it's like trying to be like metaphorical, showing, oh, love like can outcome any situation kind of thing. And I didn't buy it, like, because they didn't really seem like they loved each other, like friendship wise. So I was like, So there was that. But overall, I enjoyed the film, loved Deadshot's character, loved Harley Quinn's character, loved El Diablo, loved Killer Croc, loved Katana. I loved them all. I loved all the characters apart from Jared Leto's Joker. But even then, I enjoyed his portrayal of it, and I loved it, but I also have obviously my problems with it. I'd say on a rating system out of 10, I would give it a 7 or a 7.5, because I think it was good, but obviously there were things that were lacking, and I enjoyed the fact that this introduces the characters, so then they can kind of go off on their own tangents on like their own films kind of thing, or feature in other films as like side characters or stuff like that, and I thought that this was a good way of doing that.
I think I preferred the first half rather than the second half. I mean, I really liked like the first 30-40 minutes. I thought were really good. Apart from the overuse of music, I thought it hit really good. I mean, we got to see like the characters in the present and the past. I thought the flashbacks were really good. I'd love to see them in their completed states. I'd love to see, a bit more, like maybe a few more minutes with the Harley Joker flashback. I thought the squad was generally really good. I mean, I really liked the cast. I thought the cast did a really good job. Everything. I mean, I will give flack for Jared Leto for his portrayal of the Joker, but at the same time, I can buy him as like the Joker, especially in the flashback scenes. I thought he did such a good job. He came off as very Jokerish then. I think the whole sort of pimp get up and kind of like this mob boss vibe to him, I'm not fully sold on it. Maybe, and maybe if he appears in the next Batman movie and he's got a bit more meat to his role, maybe, when we see this on DVD and there's more of it.
It's like you can't really see him being a Batman, like him versus Batman kind of thing.
It's really difficult with like the screen time he's given. He's given such little screen time that it's hard to know like whether this can be the iconic sort of like the two sides of the same coin, Batman and Joker. But we'll have to see later on. Hopefully, he'll appear in the next Batman movie and he'll leave a much better impression. But yeah, I thought the movie was at its strongest when it was more simple, sort of like explaining the backstories, when there was character moments, when we saw the team like bonding and, coming together, I thought was really good. But it's stuff like, especially like the climax was just, there was no real stakes. It's sort of like Enchantress was just like, massive light in the sky, world-ending threat. I mean, I don't think this needed a world-ending threat. I think this just needed a really small threat, something that, you know, that this team could reasonably take on, and that could, you know, demonstrate using all their powers. But, you know, I overall thought this was a really good movie. I'd give it like a 7 out of 10. It's well worth it. It's not as bad as Rotten Tomatoes is giving it, like the 27%. It's a lot better than that. I mean, I don't think this is a great movie. I think this is the best DC movie we've had so far out of the three: Man of Steel, Batman vs Superman, and this. This is easily the best of the three, I think. And I mean, I do have high hopes for the next movies. I mean, we've got Wonder Woman coming. We've got Wonder Woman coming up, which I think they are listening and they are getting on the right track. It's not as quick as people are wanting. Obviously, you know, this isn't the movie that's turned around DC, but it's a start. It's the start of that. You know, them, you know, actually getting on track. You know, it's going to be a slow and steady process, and I don't even think with the next Wonder Woman they're going to be like, you know, make an instant hit. I think they're going to learn the lessons from this movie, make a good movie, and I think they're going to, you know, work towards, you know, building this universe up properly. Because I definitely do want to see these characters again. I want to see Deadshot again in another movie. While I do have some issues with Harley, I definitely want to see her again. I do want to see more of this Joker. I want to see him in a better light. And I mean, even the lesser characters, Captain Boomerang, I can easily see, like, you know, appearing in a sequel. I want to see Katana again. I want to see her given more to do, because I feel that she was really done a disservice with this movie. I mean, the little she got was great, but you know, it just wasn't enough. I mean, they could have cut her out of the movie and it really wouldn't have changed much. Same with Killer Croc. I mean, I would really like to see these characters more, but you know, for now, I think that'll be it. Since we've been running for like an hour, so
yeah, we've had fun chatting and just talking about the film.
We'll definitely be doing this more. As we practice and get a bit better at this, we'll hopefully not be as stilted. So, but yeah, thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.